So when you look at something like that, where you're looking at faster turnaround times, you're looking at something that needs to be done yesterday, and engaging internal stakeholders.
Yeah.
You talked about that. That seems to be very critical, because you're always sitting outside, and when you want to engage stakeholders, what do you mean by engaging stakeholders? So give me an example. It need not be your in your company, but you can say, if you're running media, when you talk about engaging stakeholders, who are the stakeholders, what are their expectations, and where do they see gaps?
I think engaging stakeholders over here would typically mean where you're able to get your management approvals faster, right? So it
Mm.
could be at C level or whatever levels the senior most level has to approve the final output of the work that you're doing. It's essentially to be able to understand what the business objective is, what I am doing, is it able to match that properly or not? It's
Mm.
the key responsibility of a marketer to be able to help solve the business problem. Sometimes when it comes to agencies, they may not be able to address these two things very closely,
Mm.
because the visibility that they would have is only, in a way, it's isolated, right? Because
Correct.
you've bought the agency on board, for example, only for, say, offline marketing,
Mm.
in lack of better words.
Correct.
But the problem probably requires a trade solution and not so
Mm.
much of a marketing solution, right? So you
Mm.
as a marketer can understand that and be able to help bridge that gap.
Mm.
And that's when I think the role of the marketer changes over here, and that's why internalization helps, or in-housing helps a lot, because you know what are the three things that you need to do to help achieve, solve that problem that's there for the organization.
Brilliant. I think you've hit upon a very important point, which is solving the business problem, which is sometimes not given enough attention. You talk about brands, you talk about communication, you
Yeah.
talk about media
Yeah.
buys, you talk about uh, uh, media efficiencies, but very often there is a conversation around the business problem,
Correct.
right? Uh,
Exactly. Like I'll be honest. When I was younger, I used to always feel, why is this not getting approved by the client? What is missing over here when we have tried addressing the brief and this is already there? And then you see that, oh, the brief has changed, but the brief has not really changed. It's just that the requirement that's there is not properly getting met
mm.
by the solution that you have provided. That's why the brief is changing, because you're trying to identify what exactly is the challenge or the problem that you're trying to solve over here.
So,
So,
yeah,
yeah,
no, I totally agree. I totally agree that that's the real challenge, which is solving the business problem. Because we talk about everything outside the business problem,
yeah,
and finally we end up actually putting some money and then realizing that the business problem is not getting solved, and therefore you pretty much you use another word which is called control,
yeah,
right? You don't have control when you are sitting outside, but when you're
correct.
sitting inside, you have control. So what kind of a control are you talking about, and what does that control do to solving the business problem? Give me an example, a real life example of how it happens, and therefore it makes sense.
See, I think it could be very simply put across, like, uh, when we talk about media campaigns, programmatic ads, first party data, and everything, as an agency you wouldn't have access to that kind of data, right, that
Mm.
the brand already owns. The data team of the brand, because now brands have evolved a lot in terms of their structures and the organization structure overall, so most of them now have their own internal data team as well, who
Mm.
understands the data, who understands the audience much better than the agency would.
Mm.
So the marketer is in a much better position to understand who the audience is, who is transacting with me, who is just, coming and fishing
Mm.
with me, and who is, who have I really lost and why I have lost. I think why is something that a lot of brands need to still figure out. But
Mm.
otherwise, the initial three things, right? It's easily controllable by the brand to understand what works and what they should be doing. maybe the marketing problem is not about doing a campaign on programmatic ads, for example. It's more
Mm,
about just doing a CRM activation and
mm,
be able to engage that audience and get that audience back into the ecosystem.
mm,
So I think those are the things that are in better control when it comes to the brand.
mm,
Agency won't have access to those things. That's
mm.
why when agency takes a consultative approach, they can help solve the problem because they will be able to diagnose the problem. They may not be able to get involved into the operations which the brand would be able to do now, but agency can definitely take a consultative approach and help advise the brand on what are the right things to do. Because I mean, just imagine, right? When I say today's market, there has to be jack of all trades. You wouldn't know exactly what to do, what not to do. That's why
Mm.
you need that kind of partner who can help you go to the next level. So when you take a consultative approach, it becomes much easier for the brand to also get that support then.
No, no, I think it's a lovely point that you're making. What you're really saying is the harvesting of the data, the harvesting of the knowledge, the harvesting of the insights. When it just sits inside the client organization,
Yeah,
there must be new value that needs to be brought in by the agency,
that's right.
and that I think is the gap that you are talking about, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Clearly, how would you bring that value? And that's when I'm willing to invest and grow with you. That's the new model, and maybe what worked for the last 50 years may not work for the next 50 years. So therefore, that you need to really now look at it and then say, when the disruption happens internally,
yeah.
and when media is actually getting disintermediated, you need to find a new method of engaging with, say, a media professional or a media head like yours, and saying your team, and then saying, hey, this is the value that we will bring in. So therefore, the redefinition of value itself is something that the business model has to look at going into the future, right?
That's correct. Absolutely right.
Okay.